Welcome to another broadcast of Truth Be Told, where we believe an experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and joining me now in studio is your other host, Captain Ron. As you know, on Truth Be Told, we travel the world to ancient sites. Today, our guests, John Sabol and Mary Becker, who are archaeologists, cultural anthropologists, and ghost excavators. John has documented and recorded the manifestations of past soundscapes at haunted ruins. As an actor, he appeared on many movies, TV series, and educational programs, including the sci-fi classic Dune in 1984 and the A&E TV series Paranormal State. He has written over 16 books on his fieldwork and has worked with haunted ruins from around the world. Mary Becker, a researcher, operator, and case manager of Casper, Center for the Archaeological Studies of Presence Ethnographic Resonance, which John Sabol founded. So let's travel to some of the world's haunted places. And you can go to their website at ghostexcavation.com. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, where we believe an experience becomes truth, John Sabol and Mary Becker. Oh, welcome, guys. How you doing? I guess where my daddy called us guys and gals.
I think they're the ghost in the machine. They're gone.
That's right. You both there?
Nope.
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
We're not alone.
We're never alone. Well, we are excited to have you guys here. We love to talk about UFOs and ghosts. That's one of our favorite topics and subjects. So today we're going to be focusing on ghost stories and ghost, because I, as a kid, and I'm going to just break it into to how I got really interested in ghosts, is when I was a kid, I grew up in Kansas, a town called Granola, Kansas. Very small town. I grew up in a house that was about 100 years old. I used to see an old man when I was a kid, and my mother even to this day remembers me talking about it. And then, of course, as I got older, I stopped seeing him. But most of us believe that he was the owner of the bank, the local bank, who built the house and never harmed, never.
You saw it in the house you grew up in?
Yeah, he'd always be just sitting or standing. He never would move. And I'd always think, well, did I just see that? Or we'd hear walking.
Did he look solid or see?
No, he looked solid.
Wow.
Yeah, it used to scare me all the time. So I'm going to ask you, John and Mary. That's what got me interested in ghosts, and I kind of want to find out how you both started this journey in ghost hunting for sure.
Go ahead, Mary. You first. Ladies first.
Yeah, John's more eloquent than I when he's describing his background, but mine's almost like yours. It probably started when I was a little girl, and I was about 2.5, I guess, when my grandmother had passed. And I would see her everywhere. And now I don't remember, maybe a little memory here and there, but my parents years later, told me, oh yes, I would see my grandmother constantly, and in detail of what she was wearing, what hat she had on, from another time when women used to wear hat and gloves when they went out.
Right.
So, I would describe her dress, how she was, where she was sitting, where she was standing. So that's how I started, and then it just seemed like our house had some things going on, even though the house wasn't old. It just had things going on in the house. So I presume it was the land that was haunted, not the house.
Oh, really?
John, go ahead.
Yes, I was born in northeastern Pennsylvania, the heart of anthracite coal region, and when I was growing up, it was nothing but depressed ruins. Everything was in ruins. So we used to play all the time in all these coal breakers and collieries and all these ruined structures. That got me interested in archaeology. And my first scientific archaeological excavation was back in 1969. In August of 69, everybody was in Woodstock except me. I was in Winchester, England, doing archaeology. It was my first archaeological excavation. Doing archaeology during the day and ghost hunting at night, and I had a lot of experiences in that old town. And ever since then, I've been excavating them as both from an archaeological perspective, with layers of memory, and from an anthropological perspective, when I create scenarios
Right.
of specific layers of time. And as an actor, I've been in many, many, many movies in the 80s. Really good movies in the 80s.
I know.
Not many of these, I can, I worked in Rambo with Stallone. I worked in with Conan. I worked in Conan with Schwarzenegger. I did James Bond. I did all these movies.
Hey, John, wait, can you explain a little bit about the excavation thing? Because I've not really heard that term before, right?
Especially in ghost
Ghost
dealing with
excavation. Now, what does that mean? How does that differ than these guys that say they're ghost hunters or what have you? What is ghost excavation, please?
Okay, first of all, as an archaeologist, I go down. We don't excavate physical layers as much as we used to anymore, because once you do an physical excavation in archaeology, you destroy what's there.
Right.
And so what we do is we do a lot of LiDAR scans and things like that. But I've been doing this since 1969, and now I am a retired archaeologist, so I can do whatever I want, and I won't have to worry about academia condemning what I'm trying to do. So as an archaeologist, when I was a real archaeologist, according to the archaeologist, I did physical excavation. But as a ghost excavator, I don't dig through layers of earth anymore. I dig through layers of memory. So every site has on the surface multiple layers of memory. As one archaeologist used to say, all landscapes are pregnant with the past. So there are multiple pasts in every location. And so what we have to do is you have multiple past as material fragments, residual traces, partial erasures, even contemporary inscriptions. And if you don't resonate with what occurred in that space in time or in a particular culture, you add another layer of presence. That's why I don't do the ghost hunting, because they don't do resonating activities that would resonate with what occurred in that space. They use all kind of electronic equipment and all kind of stuff. That just adds another layer of contemporary presence to it. What I try to do is I go down to a particular layer of memory in a particular space. And once I decide on, okay, let's say I'll do the Victorian era in a hotel, which has multiple presences going from today down to the early 1800s. Well, I focus, for example, on the Victorian era, the 1840s or the 1850s. Once I decide on a particular layer of memory, I create scenarios, cultural scenarios, as an ethnographer that would resonate with what activities occurred in that space during that particular time of the Victorian era. And as the actor, I immerse myself in a character from that time period that would identify me as one of them, not as a contemporary person doing ghost hunting who says, is anybody here with us tonight? Could you show us a sign of your presence? That's idiotic, because that immediately identifies you as an outsider. So I tried to resonate with what occurred in a particular space, and this is sort of like have you heard of a rites of passage?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so this is what a ghost excavation is. A ghost excavation is a ritualized performance akin to a rite of passage. It is context specific to a particular space, a particular time, a particular experiences, and a particular technology of a layer of memory. So I don't use any technology that was not used in the time I'm trying to excavate. I don't do any scenarios that would not resonate with an experience that a person would have from that particular time, because that immediately identifies me as an outsider. So as a rite of passage, I start off with I immerse myself into I separate myself from the present and become part of a past. That's the separation. Then the next part is liminality. I scenarios and wait and see if I get any responses. And we have the equipment we use is very contextual. For example, photography, different things that would be contextual at a particular period in history, like late Victorian. Mm-hmm. They used a lot of photography, and we have hidden these RTVP audio recorders that don't interfere with the scene. And the person's out of the scene who is listening to these RTVP recorders with headphones on. And once I do these scenarios, while I'm enacting these scenarios, if I get any responses, he immediately signals to me that something is going on, he tells me what's going on, and I immediately react to that. So it's the separation into the past, the liminality of doing cultural scenarios, and then waiting for something to happen. And when something happens, I respond, I communicate with that response that just happened, which means I make the transition back to the past. So that's a rite of passage, that whole thing. It's what I call pop. You perform in a particular, within a particular cultural layer. You observe. I have observers who observe anything going on, anything reacting to what I'm doing, and then if we have a reaction, we immediately participate in that scenario that just enacted. I'm really do a lot of work on Civil War battlefields because I use a lot of sensory cues, because American Civil War battlefields were not landscapes, they were soundscapes. It was very, very difficult to see on American Civil War battlefield because of all the the volume of cannon fire and gunfire. So you had to rely on sensory cues, which we do. Like, for example, in the American Civil War, there were 57 different bugle calls that signified different things. And I use particular cues. For example, I do a lot of work at Antietam because it was the single bloodiest day of combat in American history. It was called a I worked at Burnside Bridge, which was called a Thermopylae of the American Civil War, because there was 287 Confederate soldiers defending that bridge against 11,500 Union troops, and it took the Union soldiers 5 hours to cross that bridge. And the only way they did that was because the Confederates ran out of ammunition. They were not reinforced. They were ordered to retreat, and they did. So Union crossed the bridge. But I would divide, for example, that Burnside Bridge into the way it was divided during the Civil War. It's called KOCOA, K-O-C-O-A. Key areas, which was the bridge, observation areas, which were the Confederates on the high tops looking down on the Union troops, the cover and concealed areas, which were concealed from gunfire and cannon fire, which I would do a roll call on. You had obstacle areas where you had to jump over the fences, you had to jump over the stone walls, and the avenue of approach, the way they approached the bridge, going to the bridge. So that's how the Civil War soldier knew a battlefield divided into that KOCOA. And I would create scenarios that would resonate with what occurred in each of those KOCOA spaces. So in a cover and concealed area, I used a specific bugle call that alerted the men to assemble for roll call. And then I'd be dressed up as a Union officer, and I would do roll call. And what I did was, for example, at Burnside Bridge, the 11th Connecticut was the first assault toward the bridge. 39 soldiers died during that first assault. I knew all of their names. So I would do a roll call of all 39 soldiers, and I would wait between names, and 5 seconds later I would see if there was a response, and there were responses, which you could hear on the website, ghostexcavation.com, and I would immediately respond to that website. So it's a lot different than what the ghost hunters do.
Well, I what popped into my head, and I'm kind of curious, when you were talking about the Victorian era and then also the Civil War, when you get into a character, do you ever get maybe even a flashback from either a presence or maybe even, if you believe in past life, have you ever had a past life experience while working on an excavation?
Well, we get two things. One thing we get is sometimes we get somebody from another memory layer popping in and saying something, and that throws but we get that immediately, and we respond to that immediately because we do intensive research of multiple layers. If I choose the Civil War era, I want to know what happened after the Civil War up to the present in that space, in those spaces, and what happened before in those spaces. So if we do get somebody popping in that is not part of the excavation, we can immediately respond to that without messing things up. And what is interesting, one time, for example, remember I told you about Burnside Bridge, at the bridge, that there was how Civil War soldiers, when they marched into battle, they were like rows across, like 15, 17 soldiers across, marching in up toward the bridge. Got to the bottleneck, which was the entrance. It was a bottleneck because you couldn't fit 17 soldiers across on that bridge. So the second and third and the fourth assaults that came up there, according to the historical narratives, the soldiers that came up afterwards were slipping and sliding on the blood and the wounded of their comrades because they were all over the place. So what we got, we would do a scenario, and again, sometimes our one scenario would last an hour because we keep on getting responses and we keep on communicating with those responses until everything finishes off, and then we stop and relax. So we had just finished one scenario, and we stopped at the bridge entrance to relax for 15, 20 minutes before we went on with the next scenario. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and while we were waiting to do another scenario, one of the investigators went over to where this bottleneck was, where in the historical narrative, bodies were all over the place, blood was all over the place, and he took a photograph. What do you think he got on that photograph?
I'm curious to find out.
Yeah. Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah, Bigfoot.
He got a jogger in shorts.
What? A what?
That jogger in shorts, there was National Park Service rangers there. That jogger in shorts testified by the park ranger. There was no jogger in shorts there at 1 o'clock in the morning on that battlefield where we were. What we got was an image of an inscription of somebody who habitually jogs on the battlefield. That jogging did not resonate with a battle on a battlefield. So his image was now inscribed onto the environment, and it suppressed the Civil War presence. So now his presence, the jogger's presence, is now the paramount presence on that battlefield. That's why it's important that when you go out and do an excavation, you have to resonate with what occurred in those spaces in time. Otherwise, you inscribe another contemporary layer. So that jogger, you can see it on the website. There's a photograph on ghostexcavation.com. There is a photograph of that jogger in full stride, in shorts, right there. That jogger was the interesting thing about that is we don't know if that jogger is dead or alive. If he's dead, his image was imprinted because he habitually jogged there, or it's a jogger who continues to habitually jog in that battlefield space, which now suppresses the Civil War presence there because his imprint is now the top of the stratigraphy of that layer of earth that's there. So that's why these ghost hunters, when they go out there and do dumb things like, could you turn on a flashlight or stuff like that, or turn on my device? Well, they didn't have flashlights during the Civil War, so why would you ask a Civil War soldier to turn on your flashlight?
Right. Well, I'm curious about this because it almost sounds like a matrix in a way. Because
sounds like what?
Like
matrix,
like a matrix in a way. Because the imprints are, as you're saying, some places are so strong, and why is it that it's either certain times or certain times in the night, certain times of the year that we see them more than others? Can you explain that?
Well, I don't believe in anniversary dates because leap year is not taken into consideration.
Right, true.
So if you say July 1st to July 3rd at Gettysburg, well, if you go there July 1st to July 3rd, it might not be July 1st to July 3rd for the soldiers that are still there because of the leap year. What I do when I go to a battlefield or when I go to a site, I go to the time of year when something happened. As an archaeologist, I look at a site and I say, this happened here. And then I say, what still remains of particular events, situations, things that happened that are still there. And so that's what I do. So anniversary dates are out. What else were you saying about that? Different dates? Oh, different times. We at Burnside Bridge, we go there very, very early in the day, and we're there from like 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 o'clock in the morning. And we're getting materializations at 2 o'clock in the afternoon just as strong as we're getting at 2 a.m. in the morning. The reason why we focus on the night is there is less noise from other distractions going on, so we can concentrate more not on hitting things, but on listening for things.
Hey, John,
That's
can I
very,
ask you
very
this?
important
You
difference.
say you get these materializations. Can you explain to us or the audience what do you mean materialization? Are you seeing physical things? Or are you just hearing it? What is the experience that you're referring to? What actually is happening?
I'll let Mary talk in a minute, but
Oh, hey, Mary. I'm just kidding.
she's biting at them. What I say is, when we do a scenario, we don't get just EVP, okay? I don't even call them EVP. I call them EOC, ethnographies of communication. We not only get voices or noises or sounds, but simultaneously we get olfactory manifestations, we get smells, but that are contextual to the time period. We also get tactile sensations. We get, especially on a Civil War battlefield, we get only the women being touched. Not all the time, but sometimes men get touched too. We also get visuals. We also get movements of some of the things that we have, contextual artifacts that we have in place. Like we have letters. Mary reads a letter, and the letter gets moved from an officer. So we have all these things occurring simultaneously. So I call them ethnographies of communication because they're ethnographically contextual, because they're what we're getting is these senses from the Civil War, but it's not just only voices. We're also getting the smells, tactile, visuals, and things being moved. I cannot explain how this happens, but I can tell you, I think why it happens is, especially on Civil War battlefields, is because you have to look at the culture of the Americans before the American Civil War, especially the culture of death of the Victorian era, which was right in the smack in the Victorian era. The culture of death during the 1850s, the 1860s was that you died at home, surrounded by family. You said your last wishes. You said your last goodbyes. You died in front of your family, and you were buried in the family plot. On the Civil War battlefield, that did not happen a lot. There's a lot of soldiers who went MIA, and that's and so they're still there waiting to go home. They're waiting for the good death that they were never accorded to, because they did not die at home. They died on a battlefield, and they're still MIA. In fact, one of the soldiers, Lieutenant Colonel William Holmes of the 2nd Georgia at Burnside Bridge, we went specifically there to locate him, because he is still MIA. During that last charge, when he was ordered in his retreat, he says, I'm not going to retreat. I'm going to hold the bridge or die in the ditch. While his men retreated, he advanced. He was hit multiple times. He went down at the bridge entrance. 5 soldiers of the 51st New York came across. I know each of those soldiers' names. They came across. He died there. They stripped him of his clothing. They gambled over his boots. They dragged his body across the bridge, buried him along the stone wall. His body is still there. He is still MIA there. I went looking for him. I had Mary and other female investigators dress up as women, and I looked at his 1860 census and found out the names of the women who were in his household, and they went with lanterns along the stone wall saying, "Colonel Holmes, this is your Aunt Mary. Where are you? We're looking for you. Are you wounded?" Which they would have done during the Civil War. And we got responses from a man that says, "I'm over here. I'm here. Here." And we did it multiple times on multiple occasions, same voice, same words, same location. I know where here is. But because of all the BS that goes on with ghost hunters going on the battlefield, I did originally have permission to go with the ground-penetrating radar and search that area where here is and see if there's an anomaly that might indicate a burial, and do an actual excavation and try to unearth any remains that are there. And just think if we found a lieutenant colonel there. But we can't do it now because the park rangers say now you can't do that, because of all the BS that goes on the battlefield with these ghost hunters.
So, Mary, I'm curious as a lady perspective of working on these type of projects and like you said, getting in character to help these soldiers, let themselves be known. How does that work with you? Because for a lot of people listening, they'll be like, "Oh no, there's no way I would do that. There's no way I want a ghost talking to me, touching me." So how is it for you to be on these expeditions?
Actually, I'm not afraid at all. It's almost, if this sounds strange, it's almost normal, because when we do these scenarios, the men will do where the men were. Now, during the Antietam in particular, women were at Burnside Bridge dressed as Civil War soldiers. Mm-hmm. They were in other areas of the battles, but not at the Burnside Bridge. So as women, we would stand off to the side, trying not to interfere with whatever the scenario going on. Sometimes we were even like up in the parking lot area, so we're not being interfering. But parts where we were part of the scenario, I don't think anybody...
What about your letter?
I don't think any woman who was touched, I think you're more fascinated. It's not scary at all. In fact, when we go in the middle of the night, only because that's closed off, it's cordoned off, and the park ranger is there with you at all times. What my point was, I mean, we just can't. We never get. We get touched and everything, but
right.
We're more fascinated by everything.
Tell me about your letter.
At the 11th Connecticut, there's a monument there at near Burnside Bridge, and I read a letter from a surgeon to his wife, and I read it very emotionally. Now, for that scenario, I was the only woman there. The first time we did it, we've done it also other people viewing. As I was reading this letter from the surgeon to his wife, because he was in the back of the battle, because he was the surgeon who would go and take care of the soldiers after they were hit. So he was talking about the lock of her hair and how he lost it. He thought somebody stole it, and all sorts of things about the battle itself. As I was reading the letter, we had a camera on a tripod, and the camera on the tripod actually moved up and moved over.
Wow!
As I
just kicked the tripod with our camera. That literally just happened right here, right when you said that, Mary. I accidentally kicked our tripod and put Tony off the camera.
Oh, really?
Literally.
That was, yeah.
And a complete accident. I just did
That's
that.
funny.
Right on cue.
Right.
And then as I was also reading, we could smell like gunpowder or whatever you want to call it, the sulfur from the guns that went off. Then in the background, while I'm reading this letter, and we do not get out of character, or we try not to get out of character while we're doing our scenario. So all this stuff is going on. I'm hearing all these like footfalls in the little behind me, and then in the background, I'm hearing these wolves or coyotes howling while I'm reading this letter, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And inside my mind, and you're trying to be calm and react as like you would if you were there, and to resonate so that you can more things occur. So it was very interesting. Also, while I was reading the audio, we had an audio recorder on. Now as far as I know, nobody heard it while I was reading the letter. But as we went over audio later, I had soldiers singing to me while I was reading the letter. And in the letter, I mentioned something about home, and I heard the soldiers sing about home a few seconds later right before I said the word home.
As if they were looking over her shoulder, reading the letter with her.
And again, who was the letter from?
The letter was from it's on our website. I have, and I'm sorry, it's been
that's okay.
a little while since I've looked.
It's a surgeon of the 11 Connecticut who survived the battle, and
writing to his wife. So I was portraying the wife reading the letter from the surgeon.
Wow. Hey, Mary, listen, I know you said that's normal and you wouldn't be scared. I know that Tony and I would be running for the hills if we heard anything, saw anything, or felt anything.
I would mess myself.
Right.
Then
we'd be running to the store to get some new diapers. We're going to take a really quick break with John and Mary. We'll be back in just about a minute here, and we'll pick it up right there. This is Captain Ron with Tony Sweet. We'll be right back.
Do you suffer from anxiety, from depression, maybe even chronic pain? Well, listen up. Truth Be Told is going to tell you about a breakthrough program built on over 100 years of therapies used in America's returning veterans to help you successfully overcome PTSD, anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. The secret proven in study after study. Music therapy. The effects of music are nothing short of amazing. From strokes to PTSD, music has been shown to improve the quality of life. Now, one of the latest music therapy programs being used in America's veteran hospitals can be yours to experience for free, at home, and to help your own anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. Or just relax after a hard day. It's called Whole Tones. It takes music therapy to a new level. This revolutionary program makes use of specifically designed frequencies that have been shown to stimulate your body's natural healing power down to a cellular level. If it works for battle-scarred vets, can it work for you? Well, experience it for yourself for free at sweetwholetones.com. Like Tony Sweet, that's S-W-E-E-T. Go to sweetwholetones.com. Now enjoy the show. Do you suffer All right, this is Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth. I'm Tony Sweet. We have Captain Ron here. We have on the phone, we have John Sabol and Mary Becker. Now, we're talking with two people that go ghost excavating, and we're
on purpose.
On purpose. On purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the part. There's the asterisk right there.
This is their Saturday night where most of us go to the movie. Yeah. So we're excited to talk about this, and I know Captain Ron, you had a question about certain places.
I do. You guys, John, I think you were mentioning that the landscape is memories and all that. Does this work everywhere you try this, or only in certain places? Are there residues everywhere?
Yes, that's what I say. Everywhere there's residues.
So every time you do this, it works.
Yes. This is amazing. I mean, my training as an actor, I do storyboards, and I have an afternoon session with all the investigators that everybody's on the same page. So I go through every scenario that we're going to do. So and then when we're doing the scenarios, I probably have about 15, 16, 17 scenarios designed for a particular place. We only get through 2 or 3 scenarios because once they start communicating, we just keep on going and going and going. They love to talk. It's just amazing. And we don't stop. We just let them talk, and we answer them. They answer us back. We answer them. They answer us back. It's just amazing. But what is interesting is they start to ask us questions. I mean, a couple of times at Burnside Bridge, for example, when we're doing that roll call with the 11th Connecticut, I'm dressed as a Union officer. I did the bugle call, alerted them to assemble,
right.
Did the 11th Connecticut roll call, and I paused between names and wait for any responses. And one time, while I was between names, I got a voice that came through immediately, and it says, "Is that you, Stedman?" And I'm looking at the monument where all 39 names of the soldiers who died during the first assault of the 11th Connecticut, and there's no Stedman there. So I'm saying, Stedman? Who's Stedman? Is this like an Oprah Winfrey?
That's what I thought.
like a broadcast that we're picking up, in the air. And so anyway, 2 or 3 days later, I went and did some research, and I found out that a Major Stedman of the 11th Connecticut replaced Colonel Kingsbury, who died during the first assault. Me assembling the men for roll call, dressed as a Union officer, somebody thought I was Stedman.
Well, what do people think that are walking by and see you doing this? That's what I wonder about, too. What's that like?
Yeah. Yes. That's just amazing. We just keep on going. We don't do like you see on TV and say, "Oh, my God, I got John Wilkes Booth. Oh, my God, this is great." That's out of context. We don't do any of that BS.
We do not. We do, like I was trying to say, we don't react, and we react to what's going on around us, not over excitement,
overreact,
or give a high five or whatever.
There was another time when I was between scenarios. I had men dressed as Confederate soldiers. I had men dressed as Union soldiers. I had my storyboard, and I was crossing the bridge from the Confederate to the Union side. But we had a mic on me, a live audio mic. I'm crossing the bridge, looking at my storyboard, and all of a sudden we got this voice that said, "Captain, "Is that you, Captain?" So, whoa, where did this come from? And I had just did the roll call of the 11 Connecticut, so somebody thought
You
I
were
was
captain.
an officer of the, and that just came out of the blue. So they're asking us questions. And then I did another one. I was still dressed as a Union officer, and I was playing a simulated rebel yell with a 7-second loop, and I ran down where the Union assaults came up toward the bridge, wearing my Union uniform but playing a simulated rebel yell. So I'm running down the dirt road and then turn around and going back across the bridge to the Confederate side. One of the investigators was recording any sounds that came as I was going by. And then after we finished the scenario, he calls me over and says, listen to this. We did pick up a sound. It was one word said 3 times by a man. Guess what the word was?
Really?
Traitor.
Oh, wow. That's pretty powerful.
And you can hear that on the website, too, ghostexcavation.com on TV. I mean, we get stuff like that all the time. I mean, Mary, we would go to, for example, a place up near Erie, Pennsylvania. It's an old hotel that's no longer serving as a hotel, but it's people do a lot of work up there because it's supposedly very haunted.
Right.
We sequestered ourselves 1 week in that place doing scenarios. We did not leave the building for 7 days. We stayed in the 3-story hotel for 7 days just doing scenarios. And one of the scenarios we did was Mary, there were some children supposedly haunting the 3rd floor. So Mary was up there playing
Just counting.
Just counting for the children. And go ahead, Mary, what happened?
As I was counting, I would just go 1 through 10 because I didn't know how old these children were. I couldn't hear anything, but it was also on live feed as well. So people who were listening in were saying, oh, we hear children. Well, I couldn't hear it. I don't think anyone else could hear it. But on our audio, when we played it back, I was counting 1 through 10, and this one child, I think it was a little boy, but it was definitely a child's voice, and he was stuck on the number 5, and he kept saying 5, 5, 5. It was just wild. I also was counting, and the child is counting forward 1 through 10. A child was counting backwards 10, 9, 8, 7. So you could hear him counting backwards and me counting forwards. It was really interesting.
So you're probably surprised a lot the next day when you listen to these recordings, and then you hear, "Oh my God, look at this happened too!" Right? It happens. You hear it.
Yeah. The 6-second delay really helps us to keep going on. And then, yes, we do audio recordings, and yes, people do listen to them maybe a day or so later, but it's always contextual, I find, to what we were doing.
What is interesting is after we did the roll call of the 11 Connecticut, then I played another bugle call that ordered a charge of the 11 Connecticut up the dirt road toward the bridge. So we don't have it's a video recording, but you can't see anything because it's pitch dark. But you could hear what's going on. So you could hear us running up the dirt road. You could hear crickets chirping in the background, and also in the background you could hear soldiers fighting and guns going off. And also you could hear like a faint sound in the distance, like a humming sound. And this humming sound was getting closer and closer and closer and closer until it was like overhead. What it was a plane coming from far away right over the battlefield. So on that same audio tape, simultaneously we had past, a battle still going on, present, us mimicking the battle, and future, the plane coming nearer and nearer and nearer to us, all on the same tape, simultaneously occurring. Time unfolded.
Well, I'm curious. You're saying it's anywhere you go, but besides the Civil War battlefields, is there one other or a couple other places that really over the years that you've actually really enjoyed, or
Queen Mary,
most memorable, that you can give us some examples on?
Well, first of all, I don't go to places where they have ghost tours and ghost hunts where you have a whole bunch of people
Right. Oh,
going there twice a week, because that disturbs everything, because that lays down contemporary presence. So I don't go to Gettysburg anymore, because what ghost hunters are picking up are other ghost hunters, what other ghost hunters have done in the past. So I try to go to places that are not very well known. For example, outside of Frederick, Maryland, we went to, what was that battlefield?
Monocacy.
Yeah, Monocacy Battlefield. Have you heard of that?
What is it called again?
That's our dog.
Monocacy.
I'm going to look it up.
Monocacy. Actually, the Battle of Monocacy, it saved Washington from the Confederates. It was right outside of Frederick, Maryland. We got a lot of neat things there. It's hardly anybody ever goes there, and it's almost within the city limits of Frederick, Maryland, which is not too far away from Washington, D.C. So that was a really good place. I used to live in Santa Fe. Oh, not Santa Fe, San Antonio. And I went once, we did research on the Mission Trail,
Right.
going from Santa Fe south toward Mexico, the Mexican border. And the further away you go from Santa Fe toward the Mexican border, the chapels and the churches and all that stuff get smaller and smaller and smaller. Man, you get all kind of things going on there. There's hardly any people there, especially on these small churches that are really far away from San Antonio on the Mission Trail. And you get not only human voices, you get sounds of animals, you get weird stuff going on all over. I lived in Mexico for like 11 years, and I took part in a lot of, that's why I got to be in all these movies, because in the 80s, everybody was filming in Mexico, so I got a shot at every script that came to Mexico. But anyway, in Mexico, I took part in a lot of curandero ceremonies. The curanderos were curers, Native American curers, Nahuatl Indians and Zapotec Indians. And participating in a lot of their curing rites, a lot of weird things happen too. Like I saw manifestations of entities. I mean, it looked like a dog, but it had a monkey head. You know, things like that.
That's my brother.
On a dog's body, a monkey head. Well, all these really wild stuff. And I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't taking any drugs. It was just a curing ceremony where they would use the egg. Like if you saw the movie The Alamo,
Right.
where they're near the end of the Alamo, they use the egg and they put it in water and whatever manifests out of it, things like that. But the most, I've done this since 1969, and I have to tell you, from 1969 to the present, I have never encountered anything demonic, anything evil, or anything becoming attached to me and going home with me. And all that time, never.
Well,
Now in this house, me and Mary live in this old Victorian house. It's like the 1880s, and it's extremely haunted. But I don't hardly sense anything. But Mary sees ghosts in this house all the time. So it might be that, I don't know, I have this non-sensitivity to paranormal phenomena or something like that. But I don't get these manifestations. Maybe that's the reason why I don't feel like I feel anything evil.
Well, we have.
But I have to tell you, one time, the first time in Winchester, in 1969, I met this woman, and she knew that I was interested in ghosts. So she says, you want to have a seance? So I said, yeah, sure, okay. So we were in the High Street in Winchester, and it was overlooking. We're on the second floor, and the first floor there was a pub there, so there was a lot of noise. So there was 6 of us, and we're all in this circle. And except for her, she was directing it, and she would say, okay, you're all falling down a deep well, everything is dark. I said, she's using psychology on, she's trying to hypnotize us. So I wouldn't listen to her. I would listen to the sounds of the conversations outside in the bar. So this went on for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I said, well, I better concentrate because this is getting really boring and nothing's happening. Then all of a sudden, my whole body just started to move, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was as if somebody was pulling me back, banging my head off the wall, then pushing me down, banging my head off the wall, pushing me down. I had this image, like in American Werewolf in London, that I had a snout that just started to protrude out like a wolf, and I had all these big fangs come descending down into my mouth, and all this spittle was coming out. So, whoa, this is wild. And I said, I better open my eyes because something's going to happen if I don't open my eyes. So I opened my eyes, and bloop, everything's all gone. So what was interesting about that was I didn't know it at the time in '69, but I've written 34 books, and in one of the books that I've written talks about this experience, and I did a little research on Winchester. Winchester was once the ancient capital of Britain, and the English used to demand from the Welsh tribute in wolf skins. That's why there are no more wolves in England or Wales, because they got exterminated by this tribute. What was interesting is that I was working at Wolsey Palace in Winchester. Wolsey Palace was so named because of the tribute in wolf skins. So was I possessed by a werewolf or a wolf ghost during that seance?
That's a wolf ghost.
That's pretty well.
Yeah,
we only have about a few minutes left. So unfortunately, this hour went fast. So we're going to have you back. But the question is the purpose. What is the purpose and final end game of doing these expeditions or excavations? What is the final product that you want to walk away with?
Well, first of all, I mean, if I'm on a Civil War battlefield, when we get responses from these soldiers, they say they want to go home. When they say they want to go home, they're not talking about heaven. They're talking about going home to Georgia, to Alabama, or whatever. So what I'm trying to do is show them the good death, how they could die to do good death. So I really go after on Civil War battlefields. I go after those that are still MIA, that never were accorded to good death, and I try to transition them into having the idea of a good death, so they could peaceably move on to where they're going. Other places, a lot of this stuff is I do not try to banish ghosts, or I do not try to cross them over normally, because that's not my function. That's the function of the family who is passed on themselves.
Right.
And when it's their time, They'll get them over. But what I try to do is this is part of archaeological heritage. It's part of cultural heritage. Hauntings I believe, are part of cultural heritage, and it's very, very important that we acknowledge their presence, because it speaks about what happened in the past, and maybe it might happen to one of us.
Right.
I look at a lot of these hauntings as attachments, as they feel attached to a certain place because they had fond memories of that place. They had experiences that they remember, and they want to stay there. We're doing Mary works here at the Omni Bedford Springs Resort and Hotel, and there's a lot of Victorian presence here. And what we get here is these people are still here because they had some really unique, pleasurable experiences that they had here while they were guests here, and that's why they're still here. So I feel that, they'll move on when they feel, okay, they're bored with having the same experience for all this time. So I think it's all part of, helping the Civil War soldier that is still MIA so they can have the good death, and also documenting the cultural heritage of different places. Go ahead, Mary. Go for it.
And then I also think that they just want to tell you that they're there and that it's okay. And every one of them, they want to tell you their story,
right?
Which I find fascinating.
Oh, of course. I mean, us history buffs, like myself, so I would love. I think Captain Ron and I should go out with you one. No.
Tony just wants to dress up like these different characters. I think that's maybe part of the maybe on Halloween.
It's amazing. I've had people say, well, I'm not an actor, I can't do that, and all of a sudden they get really involved, and they're just unbelievable. It's great. I mean, it is not boring at all. I mean, things happen all the time.
Yeah, you'll never see us sitting around
waiting for something to happen.
Well, I want to do it. I want to do it, so we're going to make this happen one day.
Book it.
Well, thank you guys so much, John and Mary. Thank you guys for being a part of the Truth Be Told show. And you can go to their website, excavation.com. Do you do tours with people or no? You just kind of do your own thing?
We do. I do tours, but it's archaeological ethnographic tours. I really,
That includes ghosts.
that includes ghosts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you guys for doing what you do, and thank you for taking the time out of your day and being on Truth Be Told.
No problem. Anytime you want us back, we'll be happy to come
Oh,
back.
you got it. All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
You too.
All right. Wow.
You were getting scared there for a while, Tony. I saw that.
Because I saw
The
that
ghost.
you wanted to dress up with the woman's clothing.
Was that scarier part, or was the ghost part the scary part? I'm not sure.
Well, actually, ghosts don't scare me.
Really?
Ghosts don't scare me. I find them fascinating. I would love to actually.
If something touched you on the arm, it wouldn't scare you.
Well, if I'm like laying in bed and it's like 2:00 in the morning and I feel something touch me and I look around, there's nothing there. Yeah, that would probably get me. But if I was going in expecting it, probably not. Well, I may shit my pants a little bit.
I don't know. I think, yeah. If I saw anything like they say they saw, I would be
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah, they
pretty scared.
seem like pretty nonchalant, like, whatever.
Listen, guys, if you like anything like this, ghosts and or aliens or abductions or anything in that realm that we talk about on Truth Be Told, come on out to Contact in the Desert, where we'll be out there hanging out with all the monsters of this genre.
May
As you
19th
know.
through 22nd of this year.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun last year. It's going to be great this year. All the big names are there. It's a really good event. So come out and join us out there.
That's right. And we're going to have a contest. You can go on our social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and we're even here on the show. We're going to give away tickets. They're providing a few tickets to give away. So
To the Contact in the Desert?
yes.
Awesome.
Yes, so you guys keep an eye out for that. So, but we want to thank you. You can go to truthbetoldwebtv.com, check out all our upcoming guests. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate you. Over 10,000 subscribers, 1 million views. We thank you for that. iHeartRadio, iTunes, and we want to thank you guys for tuning in every Friday right here on UBN Radio. So until then, we'll see you next time right here on Truth Be Told.